when, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Roads to Liberty presents The Guardians of Liberty with your hosts, Nathan Parada and Zach Taylor.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Guardians of Liberty podcast, brought to you for the very first time in video. Hello, everybody. It is I, your host, Nathan Parada, along with my co-host, Zach Taylor. Say hi, Zach.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Hey, have you had a good week, Zach?
Yeah. It's been a good week.
For the most part, I mean, Nebraska won last week, so that's obviously a good thing. And then you were able to make it out to the your very first Tuesday for Liberty hangout at the Library Pub in Omaha.
That was
it was cool seeing you there. We had a lot of new faces that showed up, so it's always awesome to see new people come out to our meetings.
The best part is Mike brought the cable that I needed, so now I can start using this microphone with the LPNE camera and start doing some like on the spot interviews and stuff. And for whatever reason, I found this little fuzzy for the microphone. So moving on up in production quality.
Yeah, that's good. The only thing that was holding you back before was the lack of that cord. So now you got that. All of you guys can start seeing more content on the LPNE Facebook page. So I'm really looking forward to that coming up.
Yep. We have an interview coming up with the treasurer for the LPNE. I'm going to be interviewing Mike Kniebel, the District 1 coordinator, again. I would interview Ben Backus, but we've talked, and he's said that there's really not a whole lot going on his way yet. So we're talking about maybe doing an interview where he can tell us what it's like to be an elected libertarian. So that'll be fun, but there's not a whole lot going on in his neck of the woods other than Senator Ebke's campaign, which is its own monster at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he pretty much tells you everything that he's up to on the Roads to Liberty podcast. Mm-hmm. So that's our parent podcast, everybody. So if you like listening to us, you'll love the Roads to Liberty podcast. But anyway, we wanted to talk to you all today about the topic of secession. And that's why we had Zach read the beginning of the Declaration of Independence to open up this show. We wanted to talk about, specifically because of the Catalonia issue that happened over the last week, where Catalonia held a referendum to gain independence from Spain, and it passed with 90% of the vote with 40% participation. I mean, a lot of the reason that the participation was so low was because the Spanish government sent their armed thugs into the country to steal ballot boxes, to close voting places, to break skulls and drag people out of buildings and cause havoc among the voters. But still, even after all that, 40% of the Catalonian people came out to vote and overwhelmingly decided that they wanted independence from Spain. And after all this nonsense that the Spanish government has been putting them through, I can only imagine that if they would hold a free referendum today, that the approval ratings would just skyrocket after this thuggery from the Spanish government.
So the polls are showing about 70%. The people who were against the referendum wouldn't have voted because Spain was telling them not to. But the numbers were overwhelmingly, like, 70% on a vote is almost impossible. So to get that high in an actual free election is insane. This is a group of people that want to leave pretty badly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I can only imagine after all this thuggery that went down, that 70% number, was that polled before or after?
Before.
So
It would
I can only
probably
imagine.
go up a little bit. It would go up from the 70%, but it would go down from the 90%. So it'd probably be like 75
Well, yeah,
to 80.
probably. That's still an overwhelming
Yeah.
majority.
That's like almost communist dictator levels of majority.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of you hardly ever see a vote that's that's a super majority right there.
Mhm.
To have a 75% approval rating for a referendum for independence, because that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Independence isn't something to take lightly when you're voting to leave a country that you've been a part of for hundreds of years. The Spanish nation has been in one piece.
I think
I
we
mean,
need to focus on what's important here. The most important thing. What's going to happen to the Spanish Football League when their best team leaves because of a referendum?
I don't know. I guess it all depends on how angry the Spanish government is and whether or not they just let them continue playing as if they're one country still.
Barcelona would not be allowed to stay in the Spanish leagues. It wouldn't happen.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know the first thing about European soccer leagues, but I would imagine they'll find a home somewhere.
I'm going to keep
Yeah.
this joke going. I barely watch soccer, but I'm going to keep this going just to annoy you.
You're going to keep this joke going that you're some diehard soccer fan that just lives and breathes the sport.
So
And
there's
this
probably
is
like
America.
there's two
All right?
people.
We only watch one kind of football here.
There's two people out there maybe that understand what I'm even talking about. Like, Barcelona, what? It's the biggest club in the world. They're bigger than Manchester United. They're bigger than the Cowboys. They're bigger than the Yankees. It's money.
Yeah, well, nobody in this country cares about any of that. So,
So, not true. There is an emerging Latino population in America, and they very much care about soccer.
okay, fine, whatever. But they don't care about Barcelona.
Dude,
I mean, why would they? And
Because it's
why are we even talking about
Barcelona.
soccer? We're trying to. Whatever, dude. I don't want to argue about a sport I care nothing about right now. I'd rather talk about secession and independence for Catalonia, and just forget the stupid soccer stuff.
So,
But yeah, I mean,
did you see the
the main
picture that I
argument
shared
that this-
earlier? Because it was a really powerful.
Which one?
There's like a video of this too, where the firefighters from Catalonia were standing between Spanish police and Catalonian citizens, protecting them from the police, and the police turned on them and started beating them with batons.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
Like, that is.
I did see that.
That's messed up.
That was a very powerful image. I mean, it just goes to show you, who's the ones that are really out there protecting the people. Is it the firefighters they're actually standing between these armed thugs sent by the Spanish government and the people who just want to vote on a referendum. I mean, firefighters versus cop. I mean, I know whose side I'm on in that battle.
And
So, 'cause they're protecting the voters from and they're all dressed up in their SWAT gear. They've got their batons out.
So riot
they've got
police in
their-
Europe are on another level than from riot police in America. We don't have riots like they do. Riots are much more common in Europe. In America, we've seen riots recently, and cops don't know how to handle it, so they don't. They sit back and they let the raids play out. In Europe, they send people in with sticks and start beating people. And
Yeah,
it's
it's all those
important.
soccer riots.
It's important to point this out, I think. Catalonia has their own police force, and some of them were following orders and going in and taking ballot boxes and beating people and all that. That was happening. They're paid by Madrid, So it makes sense that they're going to sell out, some of them. Some of them told Madrid to take a leap, and they were also there stopping the Spanish police from attacking their citizens. So there were, you know, we talk about good cops and bad cops. There were good cops here. They were vastly outnumbered by essentially military forces from Madrid.
Exactly. I mean, that's what a good cop is supposed to do, to protect the people of his community against the initiation of violence.
Yep.
I mean, libertarians, that's all libertarianism is. It's about, you know, the absence of aggression, which is defined as the initiation of violence. You know, and a lot of libertarians object a lot of times to the militarization of police forces in this country, but I want to make something very clear. I'm not against the idea of police.
Right.
You know, the idea of police is enforcers of justice. You know, the individuals that go out there and stand between you and criminals, and stand between you and thugs who want to impede upon your liberties. I mean, people who do that as a profession, that's an honorable thing to do. Unfortunately, nowadays police are used to, you know, enforce, you know, draconian laws against people. You know, they're used. Go ahead.
The thing with the problem that we have in America with our police is that with all these non-victim crimes that they have to enforce, like the laws, there's not enough police, so they end up lowering hiring standards and keeping bad cops on too long. So if we went down to a legal system that was more bare bones, they only worried about actual crimes, the policing would get a lot better. Because there would be less police, they would hire the best ones and not the worst ones, because the worst ones are the ones that are going to enforce the drug laws. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, if there's it's simple enough. If there's less laws and less need for police, then you can be a lot choosier about those that you hire onto your force. It comes down really to that. We talked about this a bit last week when we went into our segment on the war on drugs. Like, Eric Garner was killed for selling loose cigarettes, and that's simply a byproduct of how large the state is and how it gets in the way of our everyday lives and how it imposes itself upon us for innocuous things, like selling loose cigarettes. It's really ridiculous. But I mean, in Spain now it's at a completely different level. I mean, they're breaking into polling places, dragging people out into the streets, hitting them with batons. All acts of just egregious aggression against the citizens of Catalonia, and for the crime of what? What is their horrible, terrible crime that makes them deserving of the beatings they're getting?
Trying to take the tax money away from Madrid.
Yeah, they're tired of being looted and plundered by a central government, and they don't want to be a part of it anymore. They want to have a vote about the independence of their country, and for that, they deserve to be beaten in the streets like stray dogs. It's disgusting.
So we should understand, these are not people that are they're not our ideological allies. They're kind of socialistic. They want to join the EU. They're not libertarian. But we still support their right to self-determine. Exactly.
You don't have to be a libertarian for me to sympathize with your right to have an independent country. I'm all for California if they, by some miracle, they decide to leave the Union. I'm all for them doing that. Now, I'm not ideologically aligned with them. They'll probably become a hard left, socialistic style country shortly after independence. But you know what? So be it.
And then they go bankrupt soon after.
Yeah, exactly. So be it. So be it. Let them serve as an example,
Yep.
But so long as they allow counties in their state to vote to leave California if they wish, And so long as they let individuals leave their new country and to rejoin the U.S., then have at it. You know, have your experiment in independence if you want. I'm all for it. Go for it. I don't think it's going to end well for them. And I don't know if independence will end well for Catalonia either. But you know what? It's not my business to make that determination for them. Yeah. It's their country. They should make that decision.
So Catalans are actually a different, I hate to say race, they're a different ethnic group than Spaniards. Different language, different culture. They're in the north. They have higher education levels on average, better, higher education means more money on average. Like, we can all find outliers where that's not true, but the average that's how the world works. So while they're still kind of left leaning, they're there's a lot of things that you could say about them, like they work harder, they have some more capitalistic tendencies than the Spanish at large, but that's dealing with a lot of like culture and ethnic stuff that I don't like to make sweeping generalizations. Those are more true on average of Catalans than they are of Spanish. The Spanish, in general, are very authoritarian. Historically speaking, they always have been. Catalans are less authoritarian, which is not to say that they're not authoritarian, they're just not as much so as the Spanish.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the ideological bent of Catalans in general is. Now, I'm pretty sure they're not libertarians. No. You know,
those don't exist in Europe.
Yeah, it's very rare that you're going to find an honest-to-God libertarian in Europe. You know, there's very few of them. Mm-hmm. You know, but regardless of their ideological bent, they still have the right to self-determination. And if you look, a lot of countries, a lot of ethnic minorities that broke away from states where they were a minority and to form their own country did so out of a sense of self-preservation as well. I mean, you look at the Armenians when they broke away from, Russia. You look at the Ukrainians, and Turkey, and you look at the Ukrainians, and you look at the Poles, and you even look at some of the Baltic states where ethnic minorities were persecuted by the Yugoslav government. I mean, a lot of these times, independence is a form of self-preservation, where they want.
This isn't the only independence movement going on right now. The Kurds just got independence in northern Iraq, and
exactly.
If you want to talk about doing it for the survival of an ethnic group, that is the most prime example we have in the modern world. The Kurds have been screwed by every country that occupies what we would consider Kurdistan. It's like Syria, Turkey, Iraq, and a little bit of Iran. And every one of those countries oppressed the Kurdish people badly.
Yeah, it's much the same way that the Armenian had it back in the day, because they were split between the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire. And now the country of Armenia is just made up of the Russian half of that country, of what used to be Armenia. Yeah, now Kurdistan, the independent country, is just going to be made up of the Iraqi section, but there's going to be parts of Kurdistan that belongs to a whole bunch of other countries. And, I mean, the thing about Kurdistan is...
They could get part of Syria in the long run because Syria is so destabilized. If Kurdistan in northern Iraq becomes a functioning country and develops something of a good military and a stable economy, before the Syrian war ends, you will see part of Syria go into Kurdistan.
And that may very well be the case.
It would be better for everyone involved, except for Assad. Or Assad.
Yeah, I think we can live with that.
Yeah.
But whatever the case may be, I mean, no one seems to have an opposite. Well, no one on this part of the world seems to have any kind of opposition to Kurdish independence, because I think we all kind of see the Kurds as allies against ISIS, because they've been doing a hell of a job fighting the Islamic State in their side of the world. I mean, they've already taken into their hands the practical steps necessary to gain their independence, whereas the Catalonians, they've taken a vote, and it was a vote that passed with 90% of the votes saying yes, with a 40% participation rate. Now, that's not fully indicative of the opinions of all Catalans, because the Spanish government was telling those who wanted to stay not to vote. So that definitely skewered the numbers in favor of independence. But still 90% is a very large number.
The polls, between the polls and all the actions that have happened since then, if they had a full vote and got 80 to 100% turnout, it'd be about a 75% vote to leave.
Dude, again, very overwhelming majority.
The big difference here is the Catalans are trying to have a peaceful leaving of a country, which probably won't work for them. They probably will not get their independence through this.
I mean, how many
Kurds
countries
are willing
have
to fight for it, though, and that's the difference. That's why they have independence, and the Catalans probably won't.
Yeah, I mean, there's not very many examples of countries gaining their independence peacefully. I mean, there are a few here and there. I believe Norway gaining its independence from Sweden is an example of a peaceful separation. I don't know if you'd categorize the Kurds as a peaceful separation, though I don't think Iraq is going to try very hard to keep them in, because that country is a complete mess, and they're not going to be able to.
So in order to gain their independence, they had to fight off ISIS. They're having to fight, people don't want to admit it, but they're fighting a war against Turkey. Turkey is attacking the Kurds in northern Iraq because they don't want... If the Kurds form a country in northern Iraq, there's going to start being pressure from all the Kurds who are in Turkey to either move to northern Iraq or to start trying to carve part of Turkey and return it to Kurdistan like realistically it should be.
Exactly. Now, I want to shift the conversation a little bit to why libertarians and Americans should support the idea of secession. Now, I wanted to read you a few quotes, two from Thomas Jefferson and one from Abraham Lincoln in regards to secession. All right, here's the first one. If there be any among us who would wish to dissolve this union or to change its republican form, let them stand undisturbed as monuments of the safety with which error of opinion may be tolerated where reason is left free to combat it. Also from Thomas Jefferson. If any state in the Union would declare that it prefers separation to continuance in union, I have no hesitation in saying, let us separate. Now, I'll let you guess who said this next quote. It may surprise a lot of listeners. Any people anywhere being inclined and having the power have the right to rise up and shake off the existing government and form a new one that suits them better. This is a most valuable, a most sacred right, a right which we hope and believe is to liberate the world. Nor is this right confined to cases in which the whole people of an existing government may choose to exercise it. Any portion of such people that can may revolutionize. Now, I think you already know the answer to who said that quote, Zach, but I'm just going to let you guess, just in case.
Was it George Washington?
It was not George Washington.
Oh, darn.
Give you one last guess.
Teddy Roosevelt.
It was none other than the great emancipator himself, Abraham Lincoln.
The president
very ironic.
who started the War of Northern Aggression?
Well, I mean, that's what I would call it. But, I mean, yeah, I mean, none other than the man that initiated the war against the South for secession. I mean, here's a man, and he was talking about the Mexican War, just so everybody knows. He was talking about the independence of Texas from the Mexican Empire.
Yeah.
It's very telling that Abraham Lincoln believed in the rights of secession when it came to, Texans leaving a Mexican government. But when it came to those very same Texans, along with half of the country, leaving his government, that's a completely different story.
Yeah.
Now, he couldn't let that happen.
It's a long tradition of American presidents being complete hypocrites on issues. We do want to be careful. Obviously, slavery is a terrible thing. My opinion is slavery is worse than death. We don't condone it in any way. That's not why Abraham Lincoln went to war with the South. There were people in the Northern Army who were fighting to free slaves, and those people are heroes. That is not why the federal government in the northern states declared war on the South. They didn't care. The government has never cared about minorities. They only care about power.
Exactly. Abraham Lincoln expressly stated that he had no desire to free the slaves during the Civil War. His one and only goal was the preservation of the Union. Slavery be damned. And he stated very specifically that if he could keep slavery, he would. If he could abolish it and that would help the cause, he would do that. If he could abolish it in some places and keep it in others, he would do that as well. I mean, his entire goal was just to keep the South within the Union.
He was not trying to give rights to black people.
No, absolutely not. As a matter of fact.
What is it? Liberland or whatever? They made a country? Liberia. Duh.
Liberia.
Oh, geez. So they make a country in Africa, which, whatever, and start shipping slaves back to Africa. So you have people who are being sent to the continent they came from, but it's a huge continent, so they're not going anywhere near home. Most of them have never seen Africa. They're Americans, and they're being shipped off willingly, allegedly. The whole situation was a giant cluster. It was big government at its finest. The South was not morally right, but neither was the federal government in the North. There were no good guys in either government.
Exactly. I mean, and I've seen a lot of people who take this stance but try to make the South out as the good guys. No. Like, they weren't fighting over slavery. Actually, a lot of them were. If you read the Declaration of Independence for a lot of these southern states, Mississippi, for example, they mention specifically the issue of slavery and wanting to preserve it. So let's not pretend that the Confederacy were the good guys in the Civil War.
There weren't good guys. There were good people. Oh, geez, I'm about to trump this. There were good people on both sides.
No, only one side's allowed to have good people. The good people in that war were the people who took up arms to defend their homes.
Yeah.
No, those are the good people.
Or there were people in the northern armies who were legitimately so anti-slavery that they took up arms to destroy the practice.
Yeah, I mean, the only good guys in that war were the people who took up arms in defense of their homes. And this is the primary reason that I'm not in favor of tearing down all these Confederate monuments, because most of them are dedicated to the foot soldiers who fought in these wars. And I think they should definitely be honored, foot soldiers on both sides.
Yeah. So, you've got the people in the South who were defending their homes. Most of them were conscripted. And I will always fall on the side of a conscripted soldier. There were good people in the North who were fighting to end slavery. They just weren't in the government. They were foot soldiers. So
there was just your average day-to-day guy.
And
pretty much,
with our background, I think we're both going to always kind of fall on the side of the common military person who's trying to do the right thing, regardless of how messed up the government is.
Definitely. I mean, and the thing about it is, I mean, the laziest and worst argument I always hear against secession movements is it's illegal. Yeah, you hear that all the time. That the illegality of secession, as if a central powerful government is ever going to allow a legal means of secession. I mean, examples of that are so rare. You know, I think Norway gaining its independence from Sweden is one of those rare examples of a peaceful secession movement. But by and large central governments don't want smaller regions to break away and form their own countries. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen peacefully. And the violence is almost always initiated by the central government against the seceding people.
Yep.
I mean, in my opinion, that was the case during the Civil War, as the attack on Fort Sumter only happened after, Abraham Lincoln was sending resupply missions to the fort. And that war was going to happen regardless of what happened at Fort Sumter. There was going to be an invasion regardless. But it's almost always the case that these things turn violent. The central governments aren't going to allow illegal means. Now, in the case of the United States, I believe it is actually very constitutional for states to secede from the Union. And I ground this in the 10th Amendment. And this is what the 10th Amendment says. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. It basically means if the Constitution does not grant a power to the federal government, that power is reserved by the individual states. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never read anything in the Constitution that allows the federal government to hold a state that no longer wants to be a part of it within the Union. I've never seen that in the Constitution. It doesn't exist. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that the United States government may invade and destroy a state simply because it wishes to secede.
The federal government during the Civil War, that was an illegal act of war.
It was. I mean, not only because it was never justified constitutionally, but it was never actually declared until about a year into the war. Abraham Lincoln unilaterally raised an army and unilaterally sent it into the South to fight the Confederacy.
You mean like Obama and Trump have done?
Like every single president since has done.
In Bush's defense, he at least went to Congress for a declaration of war, like, once.
Yeah, against Afghanistan, but then he used that as justification for Iraq.
Yeah.
And he used that as justification against, every increase.
All the, Obama and Trump have been piggybacking on that one authorization to go to war 16 years ago.
Yeah, they gave him authorization to go after Osama bin Laden, and all of a sudden that turns into authorization to attack Libya.
And Syria somehow. And Yemen and
Somalia. But yeah, I mean, as far as secession movements go, look, it is always, in my opinion, better to have smaller states than it is to have larger ones. Mm. And you can, whether you're an anarcho-capitalist, a minarchist, or a classical liberal, I think you can at least agree that smaller governments are better than large ones, and decentralized governments are better than centralized governments. And I'm always going to fall in favor of breakaway movements to carve out smaller, more cohesive countries out of larger and more centralized ones. I'm always going to fall on that side of the issue here.
So,
and whether it's Catalonia in Spain, the Kurdistan in Iraq, or whatever, or California in the United States, I'm always going to support secession movements.
Even if we're talking about a government that's going to be full communist with all the crap that goes on with that, communist countries fold, and they eventually go capitalist. So, long term, it is always better to break up large governments into smaller ones, even if some of the smaller ones suck for a while.
Exactly. I don't think that there's any practical means for libertarians to have the kind of society and country we want if we have to take over the United States government. I don't think it's very practical to say that we should, try to elect a libertarian president, libertarian Senate, libertarian Congress, have a majority on the Supreme Court. That's never going to happen. We can...
America is 5 distinct regions, and realistically should be anywhere from 4 to 6 different countries.
I mean, it's a very large country. I mean, this country is already hopelessly divided as it is. And it's just one of the reasons, like we talked about last week, that we have this perpetual escalating political violence that we've been seeing, since Donald Trump really gained the nomination for the Republican Party. I mean, we've seen nothing but violence escalating in the streets, with conservatives and liberals duking it out with each other. It's not healthy. I don't think what we have today as a united, cohesive country, what we have are warring ideologies who fight a political civil war constantly for control of a government in order to impose their will to others. And I think it would be a lot better for a lot of people, like, hey, all you progressives, California, have your Cal exits. Here's your country over there. Have at it. I wish you luck. Have your thing. Now, you don't have to impose your will upon the people in Tennessee and Mississippi and Nebraska. They can all have their own do their own thing. I don't.
I would love for kind of a secession movement where it's like, we take the Dakotas, maybe Iowa, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Nebraska, Arkansas, form a country out of that. The agriculture, like, it would be such a powerhouse, and those are all states that are capable of operating in the black if they need to. Like, there's no incentive to do that with our current political climate, but those states could all do it pretty easily. And they're all ideologically geared towards wanting to do that. So I think it could be a very successful country. Now, the problem would be once it becomes successful, we're seeing this in Texas now. Texas has become so successful that people are moving from California to Texas to better themselves, but they're taking their California politics with them. So they're going to turn Texas into California, and it's going to suck.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it's just going to further divide here. I know the left is all about centralization of power. The left is not content with having their enclaves that they control and have their own thing. I mean, California tried to have universal health care, and it would have doubled their budget and made them bankrupt. So instead of admitting that this is a bad idea, they simply go, okay, well, the state of California isn't big enough to do this, so we need the United States government to impose our idea on everybody. Like, no. If you want your stupid healthcare plan, you have it, you pay for it, you pay the consequences for it. But instead what they want to do is impose their ideas upon the rest of the country. And my thing, this is what federalism is supposed to be. Each state runs its own business and doesn't impose its will on the other states. Mm-hmm. What we have now is not a federalist country anymore. It's a central government. And if that's what federalism turns into, I'd just as soon have independent countries.
The reason it's called the federal government is because America, when you get right down to it, is a federation. It was originally 13 countries that formed an economic partnership, and that partnership got out of control in a hurry. So that's what we have now, is what should have been a government body that really only concerned itself with having defensive capabilities and helping the states have bargaining power with international trade contracts. Now it's possibly the most powerful centralized government in the world. And that's with countries like China being incredibly totalitarian. The thing is, they're so totalitarian that they've created underground movements that undermine their power, whereas those don't exist in America because we think we still have freedom.
Yeah, I mean, the whole country is founded upon the country was supposed to look more like the EU at its inception than the United States right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we may look at the EU and denounce its centralization of power, but at the same time, no one thinks of the United Nations as one, and not the United Nations, the European Union as one country.
Yet.
We still think of France, Germany, the Netherlands, Spain, Italy. We all think of these as countries. That's what the United States was founded as being. I mean, we had a central constitution. Yes, we had a president, we had a Congress, yada, yada, yada. But it was still a federation of independent states.
Yep.
I mean, it wasn't what it is now.
The Civil War was the death knell of that idea.
Yeah, that was really the end of federalism in the United States. Was the conquest of the South by Abraham Lincoln and the North. I mean, I really wish that we could get back to this idea of free and independent states that are united in a military and economic alliance together. I mean, that's a great thing to have. But what we don't have now are the free and independent states. Where everybody can just go to their corners and say, okay, I want my state to be run like this, or I want my state to be run like that. And, we can all have what we want in different parts of the countries without having to impose our will upon 49 other states and our territories. It'd be nice to be able to have that. And, I'm very much a right-leaning libertarian. I don't believe in states' rights in the sense that states themselves have rights, but I do believe that if we are going to have governments, it's better to have small and decentralized ones.
Quickly, because we are a Nebraska podcast, I want to slide this in before we transition to the gun crap. Actually, this will lead us in because we're still talking about guns a bit. So, in Nebraska, the Democratic candidate for 1st District, which is Lincoln, Fremont, and a bunch of other towns that don't matter. Come at me.
Or to Bellevue.
Oh, Bellevue. Okay. Bellevue kind of matters. So, 1st District, the main, I guess, Democrat running for office, his name is Crawford. He's talking about how we need to institute harsher gun control, more strict gun control, at the same time that the unicameral is talking about easing gun regulations. It's like, this guy does not know his constituency if he thinks gun control is the issue that's going to win 1st District. Like, that's not going to win anything in Nebraska. Not even close, dude. You're signing a death warrant for your campaign immediately. This is why Democrats are losing voters in Nebraska.
I mean, it's especially out in 1st District. I mean, 2nd District, you might have, your 2nd District, you have a very strong Democratic presence. You have a lot of, liberal, progressive-minded people up in Omaha who kind of sway the district a little bit and make it interesting. But 1st District, 3rd District, no, you're not going to get anywhere with any kind of gun control ideas out there. And you know what? Good. I don't want more congressmen coming out trying to restrict the right to bear arms any further. I have a blanket opposition to any attempt of any kind by the federal government to restrict the right to bear arms. I oppose it in its entirety.
No amount of restriction, so to kind of segue into this tragedy in Las Vegas, no amount of restriction stops that. The dude was wealthy, he made connections, he was hiding weapons, like, it's difficult to get the kind of stuff that he did.
Yeah, and a lot of people like to talk about the mental health issue, but he would have never been flagged for mental health issues at all. So all these laws that Democrats, after mass shootings, come out and push, it always turns out that these new regulations they want to push would not have prevented the mass shooting that they're reacting to.
They're just going to plant that flag on any grave they can find.
And that's exactly really what they do. And And it's horrible and it's tragic what happens in these mass shootings. But I think it's important to keep in mind that the violent crime rate in this country has been going down for decades, and it continues to go down. And although these mass shootings get a lot of attention and cause a huge amount of tragedy, overall violence in this country is still on its way down. That's something that it's never reported in the news.
There has been an uptick in the tail end of Obama's presidency.
Mm-hmm.
Probably nothing to do with Obama. The graph is going to do this. It's going to be a wave.
Yeah.
But overall, yes. As gun ownership goes up, gun crime goes down. Because it doesn't pay to take a gun in and rob a house when they're probably packing, and they, like, tactically, if someone comes into your house and you both have a gun, you have a huge advantage because you know how your house looks. They don't.
Exactly. And you have the element of surprise on your side as well. And immediately after this tragedy, people come out and immediately politicize it. Like it's extremely funny. Hillary Clinton came out afterward and said, "We need to put politics aside and enact common sense gun laws." Yeah, we need to put politics aside and pass this political idea that I have. Like, wait, excuse me? That's not how you put politics aside, Hillary.
That's not even the dumbest thing she said in that whole tweet storm.
Oh, no, it's not.
We can hammer Trump for saying dumb things on Twitter, but the idea that putting a silencer on a full auto weapon is going to make it not make noise, that's dumb on a level that I can't even put into words.
Yeah, it's a kind of thing only somebody who knows about silencers because of movies would say.
Yeah, you have to watch a lot of James... And even then, they put them on handguns in those movies. Like, do you really think you're going to put that on an AR-15 or any weapon like that, and it's going to make it quiet? No. It eases the noise on the shooter, and that's it.
Silencers do not make your gun silent. Yeah. All right, so for everybody out there that hears the word silencer and knows about him because they watch James Bond, know this. If you use a silencer on a rifle, it's still going to be louder than a jackhammer. It's still going to be an incredibly loud noise coming from your weapon, especially when you're firing it indoors.
Yeah. That bullet is making noise itself as it's flying through the air and like breaking sound barriers and whatnot. It makes noise. That crack that you hear if you're downrange from a bullet when a gun is fired, that's not the explosion that causes the bullet to come out of the chamber. That's the sound of the bullet going past you. It makes noise. And then you're in the middle of Las Vegas. It's going to echo all over the place. That's why they thought there was more than one shooter, because it was echoing everywhere, and they thought it was coming from like multiple locations.
Yeah, I mean, some bullets go by you so quickly that they don't even have to hit you to kill you. Yeah. I mean, so the very idea that, if this guy had been using a silencer, that he would have been that much more deadly is absolute nonsense.
It would have been less deadly because the bullets themselves would have been dampened. Because coming out of a silencer, it hinders the speed of the bullet substantially, and it makes them lose range pretty badly. And these were far shots. The reason he was hitting people was because it was full auto, but if he was firing through a silencer, most of those rounds wouldn't have even gotten there. Like, they would have been dead in the air.
Yeah, I mean, so it's really just the ignorance of these people who want to pass gun legislation. I mean, the reason people want silencers for the guns, for the most part, is when they're using them indoors and they don't want to go deaf. Yeah. I mean, when you fire a weapon indoors, it's really loud. I mean, I know a lot of these progressives have never bothered to fire a weapon, and when they do, they pretend like it's some traumatic experience.
That journalist.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
That dude was an idiot. I was traumatized. I had PTSD, dude.
I mean, but one of the ways to lessen that is to either wear hearing protection or to put a silencer on your gun. I mean, it's still very loud, but it does make it a little bit quieter. And when you're in your home defending your house from an intruder, you don't want to be putting on ear protection. You want to just grab your gun and go. And if a silencer helped your hearing, then so be it. That's a good thing.
I'm sure you caught this too. In the military, they tell you to wear hearing protection, but they also tell you to always be aware of what's going on around you, no matter if you're on the range with all of your battle buddies in the safest possible scenario. You still need to know what's going on around you. You can't do that with hearing protection, and it deafens you. So I never shot with hearing protection after basic training. Like, why would I?
I mean, in the Air Force, we had these nifty hearing protect. We had these ear muffs that would they had like a radio in them, so you could hear the instructor, but still be protected from the weapons. I know you Army folks are all poor and whatnot, but in the Air Force, we take care of our hearing.
There's nothing to talk about. The libertarian position's obvious. These people are idiots. Taking guns away isn't going to prevent this.
Yeah, libertarians oppose gun control. That's the obvious thing. I mean, I don't think quoting statistics and whatnot is going to convince progressives that gun control is a bad idea. At this point in time, I think gun control is kind of like the abortion issue, where you're on one side or you're on the other side, and neither side is going to convince the other that they're right.
So the caveat to that is Steven Crowder has a Gift a Liberal a Gun program. He says that, and I agree with this, if someone goes through the process of registering to get a firearm, purchasing a firearm, taking care of a firearm, and shooting one, they'll never believe the BS again. And I think he's got a point. He actually turned Dave Rubin on the firearm issue for the most part by doing that. So,
really?
Yeah.
That's the thing about a lot of progressives, though. That they hate guns themselves. You know, I'm sure you've met these people.
I actually hate guns. I hate violence. Like I would almost be a pacifist, except now that I kind of have a family, I'm a little more defensive than I used to be. I have guns. I don't like having guns. I would rather live in a world where guns do not exist.
I'll take your guns. I'll take your guns.
But as long as someone else has them, I need them. My family comes first.
I'm kind of the opposite of you, I guess, because I like guns. I like shooting them. I just don't own one, and the reason I don't is because they're kind of expensive, and my wife doesn't really like them all that much.
I'll sell you my SKS.
Oh, I'll take a gun. Yeah, man, I'll if I can convince my wife to, I'll buy a gun from you. I mean, that would be great. But yeah, I mean, the libertarian position on gun control is pretty straightforward. We oppose it.
Yep.
No, we do not want the federal government, especially, imposing more gun control laws against us.
Yeah, we don't want the federal government having the power to do anything like that, and unfortunately, they do. And this is why Senator Ebke needs to be reelected, so that we can convince more and more people to go libertarian, so that we can win more and more control on local levels, because that's where the gun battle is being fought. It's never going to turn on a national level unless there's a huge push on a state level. So we have to hold pro-gun sentiments in every state.
I mean, I think we're pretty safe in Nebraska. I mean, we're actually rolling back gun control laws in this state. But like you said, I mean, getting Senator Epke reelected isn't just going to affect Nebraska.
Yeah,
it's going to affect people. That's going to affect the whole country.
So before we go, and before we talk about events, we both do a lot of things with the Libertarian Party of Nebraska. You are the Sarpy County chair. You're the volunteer coordinator. You're heavily involved volunteering and stuff with Senator Ebke's campaign.
Yep.
I am the Dodge County chair, which doesn't mean much. Whatever. And then I do all of the social media. We both do this podcast. I do all the editing. We have a very full plate of libertarian things to do.
Yep.
I'm sure you have all your kind of satellite projects. I am working on satellite projects. There's a ton of stuff going on. And none of that would be possible if we had to be functional adults all the time around the house, and if we didn't have loving, caring, significant others to help carry the load and get this done. So I want to give a shout out to my fiance Cheryl, and I won't throw her last name out there because she's kind of a very private person. She's not super political. She kind of goes to events and stuff for me. But when we do podcasts, when I have videos to edit, anytime I've got to do something libertarian related, she's always there to pick up the slack around the house. She ran out tonight to go get food, even though she had worked like an 11-hour shift at work because I had to do this. She makes it possible for me to do the things that I do for the Libertarian Party of Nebraska and for the Unconvention, which more on that coming up in the next couple weeks. She makes it possible for me to do all of these things. So I just want to give a shout out to her, and then go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just shout out to my wife too. I mean, all this stuff I do for the Libertarian Party, all the weekends I spend out volunteering, like when I ran the Sarpy County Fair booth, the weekends I go out to help Senator Epke in her district. My wife's always here with the 2-year-old watching him by herself. And thanks, Angie. You make this all possible. And yeah, I mean, to all the significant others of this is a thankless job in a lot of ways. Not even the chair of the Libertarian Party gets paid for this. It's all volunteer. We all do this because we're dedicated to the cause of liberty, and it's not possible without the families that back us up. So thank you.
So, events. So we've had that leadership, or not the leadership meeting. It was like a planning meeting with Senator Epke's campaign, and for strategic reasons, we're not going to be going around sharing every event that she's got going on. You need to, if you want to know about that kind of stuff, you get on the volunteer list for Senator Epke's campaign. You get on the volunteer list with Nathan. We want you to be involved, but we have an opponent. We're not going to be blasting everything out on Facebook for everyone to see. It's time to play ball for real now. So, what do we have?
Yep. So if you want to volunteer for Senator Epke, go to lauraepke.com, and you will see a tab in the upper right-hand corner of your screen for volunteer. Now, it'll ask you a series of questions. Make sure to enter your email address and your phone number. Those are how the campaign will get a hold of you for all upcoming events. Now, we do have a Lit Drop and Husker Watch Party this coming Saturday in Crete. That's going to be a fun time. But if you want to know about these events ahead of time and you want to know and you want to be involved with the campaign, make sure to go to lauraepke.com. Now, the second way you can
I'll have this done in time for people to hear about this before.
Okay, well, I mean, there's going to be events coming up for all up until the actual election. Mm-hmm. So make sure you do that. Another way to get involved is you go to lpne.org. There's a drop-down menu that says Get Involved, and you go down to Volunteer. You go to the Volunteer you go to the Volunteer tab, and again, it will ask you a series of questions on how to get involved, and that's how you get involved with the Libertarian Party as a volunteer. Now, you'll get all the updates of Laura Epke campaign that way, plus any volunteer opportunities that exist just within the party. So you want to get involved, that's the best way to do it. You'll get on our email list and get all upcoming news about events. I do have another event I want to put in here. Mm-hmm. This coming Monday, we have our second Monday of the month is the Sarpy County Libertarian Party business meeting. Now, due to space restrictions at the Bellevue Library, we had to change the location to Brownie's Watering Hole in Papillion, right across the street from the Sump Memorial Library. So if you live in Sarpy County and want to get involved, that's the best way to do it. It's this coming Monday at 7 o'clock, Brownie's Watering Hole in Papillion.
So the reason getting on these volunteer lists is important. Senator Ebke's campaign is the single most important race in the Libertarian Party on any level, anywhere. Being able to prove that you can switch to becoming a libertarian and have it not torpedo your political career is incredibly important. It will help us be taken seriously, like we've said this time and again. Senator Ebke's campaign has said it. We've said it. It's a fact. But it's not the only campaign that's going to be happening. We have someone who's very important to us will be running, but he hasn't announced yet, so we're not gonna ruin the surprise. The worst kept secret in the world. But,
among libertarian circles, at least.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of candidates that are going to be running. Some with varying levels of how well we can possibly do. People will run for seats that we don't have a chance at getting just to run, and that's fine. You should practice running campaigns if you're going to run for things.
All right. Well, thank you for watching, everybody. And again, if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app and you want to watch the video, visit Roads to Liberty on our Facebook page, Twitter, or YouTube. And you'll be able to watch the video as soon as it's posted.
Or
all right, and Minds.com as well. All right, for myself and Zach and the whole Roads to Liberty podcast team, thank you for listening. You have a good one.
Have a good weekend, everyone.